permaculture literature is full of plants with medicinal uses, but they're generally taken internally, you know, as a tincture of this, as a bark extract for that, it's, you know, this particular root is good for whatever. And we've got loads of that stuff, all very useful, and quite a bit of it we use. But what I'm planting today is more of a first aid tree, something very, very specific. It's not something that's preventative or anything at all like that, it's something that you put on wounds. It's phenomenal. I'll show you. This is a teeny tiny baby Grand Fir. It's an amazing tree. This will grow, once it's established in a year or so, this will grow up to 1.5 meters in a year. It's incredibly wind hardy. It's a good screening plant. It's a really pretty tree. It doesn't grow into a great big, you know, straggly thing like a lot of fir trees, a lot of pine trees do, a lot of conifers. This actually grows as a nice, beautiful cone. It's like it's been, you know, it's been trimmed. It's really, really lovely tree. But as it gets older, it's too small for it yet, but as it gets older, it develops blisters on the bark. And those blisters, you can pierce them and squeeze it, and you get a liquid resin comes out, and that is an amazing substance. It's been used medicinally for open sores that just won't heal. It's an amazing antiseptic. It's good. Well, before things like skin grafts became commonplace, it was an alternative to that, where you coat the open burn or the open sore with a layer of the resin, because it's very liquid and quite sticky. Put a layer of tissue paper on, cover it over again, and leave it. You know, you can bandage it for a few days, but beyond that, you need to let it breathe, and it gives a really good protective layer that's, you know, it's antiseptic and amazing material. So it prevents infections while it gives you a chance to heal, and it also promotes healing in and of itself. People have used the resin watered down as an eye wash for infections. I'd be a bit wary about that, because, you know, just because I haven't done it myself. But in terms of treating blisters and wounds and stuff, I've used something very similar, and that is the balsam fir, which is a relative. It's in the same family, but basically it's another one that's got, and that's got more medicinal uses listed, but I think that's mostly because it's more commonly used. But we can't really grow balsam fir here. It doesn't do as well in a UK climate, whereas these will really grow. So I'll show you where we're putting them. So that way, straight that direction, is south. See, that's where we've got the pods across the top. We're just next to the crater garden. It's starting to look really well. Nice this time of year. So that's south. So that is where the sun comes up in winter. So directly behind me, I'll move you around, is the barn, and then the house beyond. So I don't want to put anything to the south of that, because the sun coming up in winter is going to cast a lot of shade exactly where I don't want it. I want to get as much heat as I can into the house and the barn as early as I can in the day. And then of course the sun goes round in an arc and goes down behind the barn. So that way is north, pretty much in that direction. So along the bottom here, we've got really dense shelter belt that we've planted, but obviously that's going to take time to come up. But from here down along and across the bottom there is the area that we're going to put these, because they grow so fast. They'll grow to about 70-80 meters at full height, and I'll say they grow really, really fast. Some sources say you can have them approaching you know, 100 feet or so after about 10 years. You know, they really do grow quickly. So right, the first one is going in pretty much exactly here, so that between the crater garden, it's got a curtain of a screen of Elaeagnus ebingi behind it, so that'll provide all the way around the rim there, and that'll come up to about 4 or 5 meters and be really dense, so that'll block any winds in from the east or from the south. So if I put one here, in fact I'm going to put 2 here, and that again will block, you know, completely close this gap, because to the side of that is where we've already got various rows of willow. Can't really see too much with all the grass and stuff up, but you can see that's a living willow. There's another one there. There's another one. You can see just how densely they're planted. So it'll really fill in the gap between the willow and the berm there for the crater garden. So I'm going to put another couple down along this row. That'll be 3, and then I'm going to put 2 along the bottom for 5 in total. Right, let's get them in. In fact, let's see if I can do this one-handed and show just how easy it is. I'm going to put the hoary in and just make a little bit of a divot. Try to do that and watch what I'm filming isn't easy. I'll put that in a hole, put that down the side of the plug, and I'm going to step that in. Compress that hole. We don't want any voids around the roots. And that's a tree. Simple as that. Now, obviously, if I leave that, within a week or 2, the grass is going to be up above it and it's going to really struggle. So I'm going to put on each of them a collar of this mulch, which is biodegradable. I think it's cornstarch based material. And then I'm going to use some of this wood chip, which I'm not going to do one-handed, and just put a nice ring around it, and that'll mulch that out. That's the first one in. Now, there's no guarantees they'll do well. Everything I've researched suggests they stand a good chance, and some pine just fly up here, but we've had others. I tried a couple of types that just haven't done at all well. The radiata pine, yeah, didn't do at all well, which is the Monterey pine, which is meant to be another good pioneer, fast-growing, you know, hard as nails, can't kill it species. Yeah, they all died here. The wind killed them. So it'll be interesting to see how these do. But I'm optimistic. It's a really fast-growing tree. Now, we don't want 5 of these, so I'm expecting hopefully 2 or 3 will survive. The others, I can let them grow up to 40, 50 metres, and I can take them as building materials. It's not the best timber for building, but if you take it as a round wood, just to use it as a big beam or a vertical post, then yeah, it should do quite well, you know, kept dry. But you know, when they say it's not good for lumber, what they mean is it's not good for, you know, milling down into boards and stuff, which isn't something I'm interested in. I'd rather use whole trees if I can, it's less work. So, right, let's get the others in. So the next one is going right here. The reason being, behind me, there's our kitchen window there. And directly in line with it, where are we? Just there, you might be able to make it out, is the road. It's a very straight bit of road and it points straight in this direction. So even though you can see how quiet it is, you can see how peaceful it is, but in the middle of winter at 2 o'clock in the morning, if I get up to have a drink, then any car travelling down there shines its lights straight into the kitchen window and wakes me right up. So for the last 2 years I've been swearing I'm going to put a conifer here. So that's where this is going. So I really want this one to grow, so I'm going to put the best one in. So that's the second one in. That is probably the most developed one. So we'll see how it comes along. But nice wood mulching. So yeah, I'll have to keep on top of these this summer. I don't want them to dry out too much. There should be a certain amount of seepage, because there's the pond, you know, the other side of that berm. That slowly, you know, it hangs onto big pulses in water and slowly releases that to the landscape. So there should be more moisture in this ground than, for example, up around the pods at the top of the ridge. But still, you know, I need to keep on top of them. I don't want to give them too many challenges. So I'll just give them a bucket of water every week or so if we hit a drought. But at the moment, there's no signs of drought. We had a very dry spring, but yeah, it's pretty squelchy at the minute. So yeah, that's number 2. Right, let's get the next few in. So I'm a bit further down from the other 2. They're in that row there. You can see down here is where we've got a few pine species that are doing quite well. These are for the most part Scots pine, I think, but yeah, like those 2 are. But then I got this, which is just a cheap and nasty spruce. Not particularly keen. Actually, that doesn't feel bad, but you know, spruce normally very sharp needles. That's quite nice. But yeah, you can see pine. Well, conifers. Some of them are doing really well. So I'm going to continue this row. I'm going to pop it just on the end here. You can see all the willow. There's loads of them. Because further down in that corner, we've already got quite a few top canopy trees in already. There's a few oak. What else have we got? There's a few elm. Yeah, because this is the furthest from the house, and it's to the north side, so we haven't got to worry about casting shade and shading things out. You can see there's the house, so as I say, that way's north, so even in winter you can see that with the shelter belt around, this is going to be a nice little sun trap down in here, because the sun comes up over there, but there's not much heat in it. So by the time, so we want that in the house where we're going to have solar accumulators and stuff to really draw that heat into the house and make the most of it. But in terms of plant growth, it's not going to do a great deal. But by the time it passes round there and is actually passing this row of shelter belt here, that heat's going to be, it's going to be about 10, 11 o'clock. It's going to start getting the warmest part of the day, so it will really start to trap that heat. And in this centre section here, I've got plans for a pretty large earthwork, but that's going to have to wait a few years. It's a big job, that one. And you can see the odd little conifer along the bottom here as well. But we've also got Italian alder, which we know do really well here, so they're going to fly up too. So even though I'm going to put the next two down along that road there, that's more or less, they're the ones that if necessary I'll cull out. But these three that are going in this row are the ones that I'm hoping will do well. So actually, I think I'm going to put this one round about here, I think. Yeah, round about here. So I'm pretty much in line, but I'm not so close to the edge that I'm going to be encroaching onto my neighbour. So yeah, right here. So I'm down along the northern edge now. You can see just how many of these conifers we put down here. Again, for the most part, this Scots pine. I've also got a few other bits and pieces. Here, for example, there's a little horse chestnut. That's looking really well. And that's got these pine in front of it, these conifers, just to give it a little bit of protection as it gets a bit bigger. And the wind starts to catch it. We've got currant bushes as an understory. You can see just how dense the planting is. We've also got, what's that? That's an Italian alder, I think. Yeah, that's an Italian alder. There's loads of stuff. But there are a few spots where that coverage is a little patchy. That is, might be a bird cherry, that one. But yeah, it is masses of it. And then we're into, more Italian alder. So just upside of that, you see there's a few little tiny ones. They're surviving, but they're not exactly thriving. Well, that one seems to be doing quite well now. But again, in the same line as all these others. You can see there's the corner where we've got the oak, and I think there's hazel as an understory, there's currant bushes, there's little train. There's currant bushes and all sorts of a little ecosystem just in that little corner there. So I'm going to put the next two just in here. I'm not going to film that. I'll show you what I've done when I finish them, and then I'll explain a bit more about why we put them where we have. So that's all 5 planted. Right, reasons we plant them where they are. Now the obvious one is that I don't want to cast shade over anywhere that I'm going to be growing productive species, like I wouldn't want it to the south side of my veg garden. It's going to cast shade, I'm not going to be able to grow any food. So they planted along the north edge for that. But beyond that, in terms of spacing, in terms of placement, you can see where the house is behind me. Now, this ties into the permaculture concept of zoning, whereby if something you need to visit 2-3 times a day, like the chickens or the ducks, once a day like the veg, or a couple of times a day for things like your herb garden, those are the things you put right outside your door, where you haven't got to go far, you're not spending a lot of time toing and froing. Things like tree crops, like we're going to have a row of chestnut across the bottom here and hazel across the bottom here. They're going to be accessed once, twice a year maybe, not much beyond that, so it makes sense to put them much further away. In this case, about as far away as we can get from the house without going up to the top of the croft, which is actually the furthest point. But that, we're on a north facing slope. If we put tree crops up there that are too high, sweating my eyes. If we put tree crops up there that are too high, they're going to cast an awful lot of shade over the rest of the system, which we don't want. So at the top of the field, I've got trees limited. I've got 3 meters as my general guide. species going up there, which is small trees and, you know, decent sized shrubs. Occasionally I'll make an exception and go to 4 meters, but I don't want to do that to any great degree, because that, look behind me there, those pods, they're just over 3 meters high, so I don't want to go much higher than that, because I know that the low angle of the winter sun, that works quite well with those as the height they are. So yeah, down the bottom here is as far as I can get from the house without casting shade in a place that's going to cause a problem. So yeah, that is a significant, it's a small amount of shelter belt, but it's a huge amount of functionality. If I need to, I can even go and harvest the blisters of sap off that, the resin off that, even in winter. Those trees, they have their own antifreeze. It's an amazing chemical. So they're very, very, very tough. You can harvest them in any weather. So if I get an open wound that I won't heal, or I get a burn that, you know, like a blister, anything at all like that, I can come down here with a little bottle, pierce a load of blisters, squeeze the blisters into the bottle and slap it on whatever the problem is. It's also good for sores and rashes and all sorts of stuff. It's an amazing series, an amazing family of stuff. And some of the other pine, of course, we can harvest as they get bigger. We can start harvesting them for their resin, which is a far harder, far stickier resin. And when that's wet, when it first comes out of the tree, it's really good for you know, gluing wounds together. It'll give you almost like a tattoo in terms of scarring, because it tends to pick up a bit of dirt, and then that becomes part of the skin. So for about 6 months or so, sometimes you can actually end up with a line where, you know, you're going to end up with a scar eventually. But yeah, an amazing group of family of trees, and that, in my view, is one of the most important. It's one of the most significant ones. If you can grow balsam fir, then grow balsam. But if you can't grow balsam fir very well, like we can't, I highly recommend the Grand Fir. It's just as good.